Universities.
We're up and running.
All right. This meeting of the Lincoln Safe and Successful Kids Interlocal Board for Thursday, August 29th is hereby called to order. The Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted at the entrance of the room. Before we do the roll call, I'd like to take a minute to recognize and welcome our new members, Mayor Leary and Gaylor Baird. Council. School Board Member Barb Beyer. City Councilman and former School Board Member Richard McGinnis. Welcome to the board, and we really appreciate that you're here. With that, would you please call the roll?
Barbara Beyer. Here. Here.
Present.
Here.
Here. Here.
We have minutes from our meeting on April 18th for approval. Is there a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer to the young.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Is there a
I will
second?
second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to approve the minutes from April 18th?
Barbara Beyer. Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain. Yes.
Okay. Now would be an opportunity for public comment for items not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to the review of our annual report on mental health services.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to be here today. My name is Russ Ewing, and I'm the Director of Student Services for Lincoln Public Schools, and I'm joined by Allison Hedrick. Allison is our safety social worker, and she'll talk about our threat assessment process and some of the resources that we've been able to access through the interlocal agreement. And I will talk about some of the mental health supports that we have. So with that, I will turn it over to Allison.
Okay, my name is Allison Hedrick, and I'm the safety social worker. I entered this role at last fall as a result of the interlocal, and I was previously at Holmes and Leffler doing school social work. As a safety social worker, I am a licensed mental health practitioner in addition to a certified master social worker. And in this role, it's evolved throughout the last year into three primary areas. One is as a member of the threat assessment team for Lincoln Public Schools, and then I also assist with integrating our mental health system with a multi-tiered system of behavioral supports, and assisting with the integration of the mental health services into the schools as a result of the new funding. And then overall, we look at improvements in safety things that we can do throughout the district. That has primarily been evolved as a result of my position. So one of the other parts within the team that I primarily have organized and facilitate is our behavioral health therapist. She is a contracted employee through Blue Valley Behavioral Health, and she and I are the mental health aspects part of our threat assessment team for the district. Her role is going to be specialized in violence prevention and prevention of targeted violence in particular. So we will funnel her into like trainings, opportunities, and then have her as a working member of our team so that way we can inform our practice. Additionally, her role is as a therapist on the team is that she's to serve students who are identified with safety concerns and who do not have access to mental health resources. And we know that mental health resources will mitigate that risk for violence. And so her role is unique, and not only is she going to be specialized in this violence prevention area, she's also mobile. So she can go where that student is and serve them in the school that they are residing in. And so that's a really unique thing, and that we don't do with a lot of our therapists within the Lincoln Public Schools at this point. Additionally, we've kind of used her to develop this system of care for mental health services, so she's doing multiple roles, including the ongoing therapy. She also can offer substance abuse and mental health evaluations for students who can't access them otherwise, specifically for those who present with safety concerns to our team. And additionally, she's doing that crisis response piece and follow-up, so that way we can address that gap in services when the hospitalization may not be appropriate, but they're not yet engaged in services. So she can follow and partner with that family along that way. And then we're looking to explore her position further as we identify needs in the district where we can use her to continue to make our continuum of safety planning. You went backwards.
Oh, I am going backwards, I'm sorry. Okay, there we
Okay, so as a member on the threat assessment team, I'm one of 4 people. And so the 4 people that are operating on our team are me, and then Jill Wirtz, who's that behavioral health therapist who I spoke about previously, and then there's Officer Nate Hill, who is the LPD officer that is assigned through the Interlocal to focus on schools' targeted violence risk. And then we have John Sundemeyer, who is our safety coordinator and the leader and facilitator of our team, who was already a part of LPS prior to the team formation, but has really led the team and how we move forward. So as a 4-person team, we operate by managing cases. Our primary focus is to respond to safety concerns, assess the situation, and then monitor over time. We, the whole team operates in a way to engage the family early on in services and then try to reduce any barriers for accessing services. So whether that includes services within LPS or partnering with community agencies. And so my main role on the team is that engagement piece and case management piece. And so what we do after we assess the risk is we determine how can we support this student within the school. That includes school supports, but also those out-of-school supports. And so a combination of both of those becomes their safety plan within the school building. And then my job is to help partner with the school to help them monitor that plan, but then also partner with me so that way they can not be by themselves in that process, knowing that our team is experiencing more training than they are regarding the risk of violence. So throughout the year, we've done a lot of different things, including partnering with schools, but also community agencies. And so a part of our first year process in formation was also just making our team known to the community. Because if we want to be used, and if they need to know how to use us. And so that is a big part of our first year is exposure, focusing on safety planning, and working situations to help families.
So we'd also like to talk about the enhancement of community mental health therapists and support within our district through this. I want to recognize a few folks that are in our audience. With Hope Spoke, Katie McLeese-Stevenson and Wendy Anderson are here. Family Services is Tammy Sassman and Dennis Hoffman. And with Blue Valley Behavioral Health is John Day. Through this, Hope Spoke, we've been able to add 2 additional buildings that they have provided a therapist in. Family Services, 6 additional schools that are all CLC sites. And with Blue Valley, we use a little different process. They're not therapists that provide long-term support like the other 2 organizations, but they do utilize something called the youth assistance process. And this is more of a problem-solving approach where they generally will use about 6 to 8 meetings with the student, which many times is able to, with building supports, put the student in a good place to be able to be successful moving forward. And if they need additional support, then they work with the family and the student and the school to lead them to some additional therapy supports if it's needed. We have had ongoing relationships with these three organizations and are very appreciative of that. Through the addition of those buildings that I had mentioned, we now have community therapist support in all of our high schools, all of our middle schools, and 31 out of 39 of our elementary schools. So we've been able to greatly add that. Through this integration, we have provided a lot of additional training. The training has been both with the community agencies and their therapists, along with our school staff, as well as for the therapists, which has revolved around school processes, school language. As you know, we have many, many acronyms, and so just getting them to understand when they hear some of this language or supports that they have that. All of our buildings have a school social worker. Our school social workers are master's level who either have their LMHP, their licensed mental health practitioner, or they have a provisional and working towards that. So referrals are done through our building continuum of supports, through the social workers, to allow for some consistency from building to building. So we have utilized a multi-tiered system of support called MTSSB, okay? And previously you may have heard it as PBIS. When we get comfortable with one acronym, we want to move it. And so this is both a preventative part of a Tier 1, and then we know some students need some additional group interventions, and then some need even more individualized. So this therapy, if they're working with an individual student, is more of a Tier 3 support. If they're working with group students, it's more of a Tier 2, but understanding that prior to the student is receiving building interventions, and then after the therapy is at a place where it can be scaled back or even removed, we still provide those interventions. So candidates that we would think about in our school are those that even with the Tier 1, Tier 2 supports, the student is still needing more. And part of that might be they have a significant stressor in their life. It could be possibly, say, a death of a family member, or it could be a traumatic experience that they have recently or in the past have gone through. They are showing signs of mental health symptoms, which again is at a level that's needed beyond what the school is able to provide. And with some of those, it's causing multiple stressors or disruptions in the family, in the student's life, both whether it's school, family life, and the community. And the student and the parent is willing to participate in it, and also understanding that the support, that the therapy that happens at the school, we would work first to see if the family is able to access some of this support through their own resources outside of school, but we know that that's not the case with all families. And the great thing about having that in the school is the increased likelihood that the student will be able to participate in it, because it will be a part of their day that they're able to go and take advantage of that. So I want to just share a few numbers, and understanding that because of the timing of when the budget was approved and giving the agencies time to hire staff, we really didn't get going with this until later in first semester. Okay, and so even with that, here are some numbers. You can see at the elementary and middle levels what each agency, how many students they were able to serve. Total of 237 different students were able to access through the resources through the interlocal agreement. We look at measuring effectiveness, and what we used last year is something called the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire, and just so that you have kind of a general understanding, this isn't the whole questionnaire, but it gives you kind of a flavor of some of the questions that it have. And you can see that they really are some basic things about how a student handles maybe stressful situation related to friends, how they're performing in school, just different elements like that. So we did a pre-test and a post-test with the students. We did a sampling this year, and part of what we're working on for this next year is to do with all students, along with some other statistical measures as well. So here's some of the data, and know that if you look at the title of this, it's student at high risk. So if you can see that the number of student at high risk went down. So from the pre-test to the post-test, which is a good thing. So through that, we had less students that posed high risk in those various areas. And we would say the same thing at medium risk. So that going down is a good thing. And then we have more students displaying low risk, again, which is a positive. Okay? So the next couple slides are, this first one here is from a staff member, one of our school staff members, just kind of a little testimonial. And this one is given through one of our community therapists. And then again, another staff member testimony. And I think what it shows is several things. One, it shows the benefit to the student. The other piece that I think it shows is the benefit of having it at school and having students who need a higher level of care than what would be offered at the school, and the benefit of having the community therapists involved. So our goals for this upcoming year, one was we want to continue that conversation and that improvement of integrating the therapy with school supports and partnering together to support the student and the family. We want to continue to improve student outcomes, both from a school standpoint, looking at things like attendance, grades, and behavior, as well as from a behavioral health standpoint for the students.
The last two goals build the culture of reporting, and this is about getting people comfortable with the idea, including the students, with reporting if they see something that concerns them, that they share it with a trusted adult. So this just is reinforcing that positive school climate and how important that is to creating safety within the school. Additionally, increasing the capacity for management of safety concerns and behavioral health needs has to do with just training. Training the school staff on what are the warning signs, how they can be supported, and then also giving them the tools on how to help a student and reinforce the ideas that are already happening in our district of the importance of those relationships.
So that concludes our report, and want to see if there's any questions that you may have for us.
Questions? We'll start with Kathy.
I don't really have questions. I have more accolades than questions. I am thrilled with the way this has started to evolve. Students have had a tremendous need in our district, and this is a great beginning. I'm glad you've got goals to move it forward more. Hopefully we can figure out how to make sure these things are funded, or find partners like our great partners that we already have to make sure these things are continued to be funded. I would ask that you share a copy of your PowerPoint with this group, because it would be nice for us to actually go back and refer to it when a parent calls and be able to say, hey, where can I get help? Well, you can call here, and this is set up within your schools. I think that's a really important piece to add, that just the more people we can bring into helping people find assistance when they need it at the lowest common denominator instead of when they are at that high risk, the better served our students will be.
Yes, we'll share the PowerPoint.
Great job.
Barb?
Yeah, I also agree with Mrs. Stanek. This is a wonderful report and a great beginning, and I'm really pleased with us going and putting an emphasis on mental health supports. I was wondering, in those situations in which a student's parents or guardian, for whatever reason, maybe work conflicts or whatever, are not able to maybe advocate for their student, do we have a system or a way, or have we considered creating like a student advocate type of service?
So the student can advocate for themselves versus
No, someone from the community. Usually it's a parent or a guardian that comes in and is also there advocating for the student's interest. But for some of our students, that's not possible, and there are lots of reasons why that might not be possible. I'm kind of thinking about the CASA thing that the courts do. I'm wondering, is there a consideration of maybe that might be of value in this case?
So I think in some ways part of that is the role of the school social worker, because they're kind of that liaison between the school, the community resources, and the family. And also some of it is knowing the family and their circumstances, what other involvements they may have. You had mentioned CASA, it could be maybe probation or DHHS, but just kind of wrapping around and partnering with that. But some of that, I think, is the role of people like Allison and her peers in the social work to help facilitate that.
Okay.
and also just helping the student get feel that empowered to use their voice and to get their needs met too, and that's part of that social work process too, that empowerment piece and making things more accessible to families if they aren't getting their needs met in the traditional way.
That sounds good. When you were talking about where different mental health supports were available, it sounded like, pardon me, some of our schools still may not have as many avenues for mental health supports as others. Do we have a plan in place on how we can go and provide this in every school?
There are still some avenues for, again, the school social worker to help lead them to whether it's their own therapeutic support. Sometimes it might be reaching out to other community agencies to see how we can connect. And, we continue to try to find ways about getting, enhancing, just like this, enhancing the number of schools. Our goal would be to have some community therapist support in every one of our buildings.
Yeah.
And we're moving closer that way. We're not quite there, but we're still working on it.
Yeah, if as time progresses, if you can share that kind of information and how you're going to address that, that would be great for this committee to be able to review. The questionnaire, the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, is that a standard one that is used in the psychiatric world then?
Yeah, it's utilized. It was actually recommended in our CBITS and Bounce Back curriculum, which is the trauma groups that we do within our schools in the elementary and middle and high school. And so we're using that same measure actually to see where we are with outcomes in those groups as well. So that way we're having the consistent measure in both of those.
Great, excellent.
Dynamics. Yeah.
Just the last thing, and it really doesn't apply for this particular presentation, but some of our threat assessment is also external. Do mental health supports ever come into play with external threats? So typically in the adult world, or if it's adults, that we just partner with the services that are already out there. And so previous to my school social work position, I worked with adults, and so that kind of gives me that context of what services might be out there. And so we partner with the services that are there. And so yes, we help facilitate that process as well, if they're needed. And then if it's associated with a non-student, then we use employee assistance programs and partnership in that way as well. Well, thank you very much for an excellent presentation and your good work.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. Just want to echo Kathy. This is great. Great presentation. Great work. This is kind of like a wow for me because it's gone a long way since instead of being just, mental health 2.0, this is mental health 5.0 from when I left the school board. It's great. And so I really think this has just been very enlightening for me. And it's a well-thought-out plan. I'm really happy, and what I'm excited about is the way we're pulling in the whole community on this. And it's just not LPS trying to do it all on their own. And we knew we couldn't do that even 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We knew we needed the help of the community. So that's what's great about all this. Couple quick questions. You got rid of PBIS?
We did not get rid of PBIS, no.
It took me years
Right.
to figure out what that was.
Right, so multi-tiered systems of support is really what PBIS is. And what we wanted to be able to do is to emphasize the pieces within PBIS, and you may or may not know we've had some kind of the other behavioral models such as BIST, and we do some second step work with just social emotional learning curriculum. We do some Boys Town behavioral work, and so rather than having all these different pieces out there, we put it into MTSSB, and so we provided guidance, and each building this year at the start of the year did some training on a more clear piece of fidelity as far as what should be expected at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So the elements of PBIS certainly are all still there. It is Tier 1 is preventative, Tier 2 and Tier 3 are those added layers that go up with intensity as they move up the line.
Do you, like at Donald D. Education Center, do you still use Safe and Successful Kids? Safe and Successful program?
I believe the contract, there's no longer a contract, that all the training is done within our district and our building. They may periodically reach out to them if they have questions or a need for training, but it's not done in the same way as when you were at the school board to where we've got a contract with them. That's all done within our district.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Baird?
Well, on behalf of all the parents who drop their kids off at school every day and hope that they will stay safe and have a great and enriching learning environment, it's so wonderful to hear your presentation. Thank you for being the people who get up every day and focus on keeping kids safe in our schools, along with Officer Hill and your other colleagues. I guess I just wanted to ask a little bit about utilization rates. You had mentioned 237 students accessed services through the Interlocal. Can you put some context on that number and help us understand how that number has shifted since the creation of the Interlocal? Where were we before your team amplified and leveraged the support of the community in the ways that you've talked about today?
Well, what this has done is it has provided 25 additional schools with a community therapist within their building. And in a little bit more than a semester, there were, I think it was 237 students, I believe was the number, that have been able to have access in the building around that. So we have had, and the number has been growing as far as our partnerships with our community agencies and the number of buildings that we have. This has really been able to expand that tremendously, as well as the Blue Valley therapist that is involved with Allison and her team working with students and families and schools.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just a couple of questions on clarification here. So earlier you mentioned that the high risk and medium risk numbers were down and the low risk was up. Just to clarify, that's because high risk and medium risk are becoming low risk due to the therapies that they're receiving.
Exactly,
Okay,
right. It's a good thing to lower high risk,
Yeah,
right.
that-
Yep,
so-
that's exactly right.
So like the total number of students at risk is lower.
Right.
Okay, fantastic. And then you'd also talked a little bit about building a culture of reporting concerns as a goal for the next year. So how does that relate, or is it the same thing as the safe to say practice?
It's related to that. So part of it is our team worked with our coaches team, who does a lot of the coaching for our MTSSB within our schools, to develop a lesson that can even be done within the schools with students around safe to say, around how positive climate and school culture impacts the ability of reporting from students and staff, and then we've done a lot of community outreach associated with Safe to Say as well.
Okay. And then you meant, I'm sorry, did you want to
Part
add?
of on our Chromebooks, there's a Safe to Save button that's very accessible for students to be able to utilize. And I will say it's off topic a little bit, but this year we've also added a My LNK app, which is another community effort to offer basic needs and other resources, mental health resources, and other things for students and families.
Fantastic. I want to talk just a little bit about the threat assessment team. So you mentioned that concerns are presented to the team, and the team then does an assessment and determines how to dispose of those, how to refer those. Roughly, how many concerns have been presented to the team, say over the last year?
So we haven't. So at the end of the year, I developed how I want to monitor the data. But when I'm doing that right now, we're finding out that I worked on approximately 130.
Okay.
And so when the way that assessment and response is structured is associated with the best practices that all of our team members are now part of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, and to utilize that professional organization to guide our best practices in our response and intervention. And so out of all of those situations, it varies depending upon what that intervention looks like.
Okay. And then you mentioned that sometimes as a result of that process, there's some monitoring that goes on. At any given time, how many students or threats assessments that you have that are you continuing to monitor?
So the biggest part of managing risk is monitoring over time, because risk fluctuates depending upon what's happening for that person and what or isn't happening. And so we've kind of structured our monitoring aspects in the same way that the tiers are set up. That majority of the situations are third-party monitored through the school. We set up a safety plan. The school people monitor. They reach out to us if there's a concern. That would be like our tier 1. Our tier 2 is that like higher need, where I'm going to actively reach out to families, the student or the school, and say, is everything going okay? And then that top tier is someone on the team is constantly doing an intervention with that student or family.
Okay. And then, so when you look at that number of say 130 or so concerns that are presented, how does that compare to your capacity? Are there concerns that get presented that you just can't get to, or are there times where? Okay.
No, we respond to everything that's presented to our team.
That's the right answer.
Yes. Yes. And so that's part of, encouraging that culture of reporting, is taking everything seriously and validating that there is a concern, even if it's not a concern for targeted violence, which is what our primary focus is. There's still a concern that someone needed some help to address. And so even if it kind of deviates a little bit from our primary mission of prevention of targeted violence, we still work to create safety plans associated with situations.
Okay. I'm sorry. Do you have Kathy has a follow-up?
Talk to us a little about how you handle the confidentiality, because there's so much with students that can't be released publicly. So talk to us a little bit to reassure parents how we handle that confidential information.
Well, we can't, the school is not going to discuss anything with anyone outside of a school environment without a release of information to protect that FERPA confidential information. And then additionally, if that's with a mental health provider, we need additional releases for that health information. And so we, getting releases of information and encouraging that open dialogue is an important part of building trust with families. And so that is where we start. And so it depends on where that is. And then within the school environment, even within the school environment, there has to be a level of protection for that student and that family. And so it's only on legitimate educational interest and need to know. And then it's filtered through the administrator and to make sure that building is managed in a way that's not only safe for the people within it, but also protects that student's confidentiality as well.
So as we evolve this, what you're saying is the board policy is serving the students well because it's already there in place, and this fits neatly within the policies we currently have.
Yes.
Perfect.
So a big part of safety planning is really just not making it separate from what already is happening.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Yeah.
I want to follow up on my previous question because I don't think maybe I was as clear as I meant to be. Prior to the 25 additional schools having a therapist on site in the building providing services where kids are, prior to that, do you have data that you collected on the number of students accessing behavioral mental health services in the schools? And if so, what's the delta? How has it changed from before there were many people right where kids are to now?
Yeah. We did not keep track of the number of students that were served through the agencies. The agencies would keep track of those numbers, but as far as part of our records, like we had shared with you here, we had not done that previously.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Additional questions? All right. Thank you very much for presenting this important information. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is election of officers for 2019-2020. So by the interlocal agreement and our rules of governance, we have 4 officers. We have a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. Per the rules of governance, the secretary is the director of Parks and Recreation, and the treasurer is the city director of finance. So we do not need to have a motion or a vote on those. Those are per rules of governance. We do need to elect from our members a chair and a vice chair. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to elect a chair.
I move that we nominate Councilman Benny Shobe as the next chair.
Is there a second? Kathy,
I would second that.
is there any discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the election of Councilman Benny Shobe as chair of this board?
Yes.
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 A self-serving yes.
And at this point, I would turn the meeting over to our new chair and offer you my congratulations.
Very much. Mr. Boswell, thank you very much, and everyone, thank you for your vote of confidence. We've done good work already. I'm excited about the CLC process and providing the safe environment in the schools, just like a report outlined today. But I think our next order of business is the nomination of a vice chair. Mr. Boswell, I recognize you.
I would move that we elect School Board Member Kathy Danick as our vice chair.
I second.
We have a motion and second that School Board Member Kathy Danick serve as the vice chair of this committee. Any discussion of that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Rich, yes.
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 I'm waiting a second, but I think it passed unanimously, didn't it? Yes. Thank you very much, all. Ms. Danick, thank you very much for agreeing to serve. The next item on our agenda is item number 7, the approval of the 1920 school year and meeting schedule for this committee. We've had some conversations about moving the time. We previously met early in the morning, and we met over the lunch hour today. I think there's still some challenges facing us on being able to assemble as a group. I'd like to open the floor for discussion about availability and times. Mr. McGinnis?
I don't think I need a motion. We can just have discussion.
Yeah, just discussion, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would have a tough time, if not being able to, probably be able to meet most of the third Thursdays of the month over the lunch hour. I've got a previous commitment. So if you decide to do that, I would have to look at my options going forward. But at this point, I would probably not be able to attend that third Thursday at lunchtime.
Board Member Danick?
Can you attend on a different Thursday?
The last Thursday of the month, yes, I didn't check the other ones.
With the exception of November, because I kind of don't want to come down here on Thanksgiving.
If you're cooking, Kathy, I'll come down.
I'll cook, but I won't be here.
Okay.
And this board meets quarterly, correct?
It looks like we have 5 meetings set for the end of this year, 2 for this year, and then 3 for next year.
Quasi-quarterly.
So
Other conversations about? the
I'm okay
meeting
with
schedule?
changing the Thursday. I don't know how anybody else has.
Yeah, it'd be
I
okay.
guess I would just ask too, Richard, is it the noon time on those Thursdays?
Yes.
With that original morning time?
Morning time on those Thursdays would work.
Okay, is that an option that we can consider?
Morning time works for me. I don't know if it works for everybody else.
Doesn't work for me. Sorry.
I would like that to be at a time that people might, from the public, might be able to come. People with students wouldn't be coming in the morning either. So I prefer the noon time if that's possible.
I share Ms. Byers' concern that for the sake of transparency, we should make some of these meetings more available to the public. I think that was kind of the idea behind the new meeting, but I'm not sure if we achieved our goal with that either.
Yeah, well, and another possibility would be for us to take one of these meetings and move it to the evening, because I know sometimes people that work during the day that don't have a longer lunch hour or can't take a longer lunch hour, the noon time wouldn't help them, but maybe if we had some at that time and then maybe one a year in the evening, they might be able to attend that one.
Outside of, I'm sorry.
I agree. One evening one would be probably helpful for the public.
Other than that, I heard other comments that another Thursday of the month over the lunch hour would accommodate most people's schedule. Is that
Does
fair
the
to
fourth
say?
work for everybody else, the fourth Thursday?
I think that does. I did not bring one of those fancy calculator calendar devices.
Let's see.
So currently, our next meeting would be October 17th, and the fourth Thursday of that month would be
October 24th.
So it looks like we need to vote on this. So I would make a motion that all third Thursday meetings be changed at this time to the fourth Thursday and leave the second Thursday the week of Thanksgiving.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend our meeting schedule. Is there any additional discussion to amend the option?
Excuse me. Would we like to determine which would be the evening meeting?
It would probably be helpful if we could do that now with just one motion and fix the entire calendar for the year. I also feel like I haven't put a lot of thought into when that evening meeting was, so I'd like some more time.
So one thing we might want to consider is that our April meeting is our public hearing and adoption of the budget. It might be appropriate to have that public hearing at that evening meeting.
Good
That's,
idea.
that's a great idea.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if I could.
Yes.
I'd
Just pick the day, I didn't pick the
Ask
time.
representatives from both the LPS and city staff if anything that we're discussing up here causes concern.
Did we pick a time?
Like a 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
7? Then the staff would.
Mr. Neal, would you come to the microphone? I'm sorry.
I think the evening meeting for budget, I think, concurs with transparency. There is a student learning committee meeting on October 24th over the noon hour. So if we went at the noon hour, we'd have to do some rescheduling. But as far as staff and preparation for any meetings, we could make those dates and times work.
Question. Do any of the fourth Thursdays conflict with LPS holidays? Just
I'm looking through and I don't see that they
Okay.
do, other than, no,
Thanksgiving.
I think we'd actually be good with all of them.
Okay, thank you.
You don't get Halloween off.
So that fourth Thursday in April, what was I did not record the date of that. Does anyone have that available?
23rd, I think.
23rd?
23rd. So we're considering a night meeting on the 23rd of April.
And do we want 6 p.m.?
I think,
That sounds good to me. Do we need to go later than that for a start time?
I would
Ms.
suggest a little bit later because most people are eating at that time.
Would you make a suggestion, 6:30, 7, 7:30?
6:30 or 7 sounds good to me. I would like to have staff to also, because it does interrupt their evening.
Mr. Neal, do you have some suggestions, or Mr. Johnson?
6:30 or 7, we can make arrangements, depending on location, we can certainly make arrangements to use this space.
and
Yeah.
we need staff to televise too.
Yeah, we've been alternating between the school board, which does have the televised capacity in here for our meetings. So that would be something to consider, but I Off the top of my head, I can't think of any real conflicts. If anyone else can think of something, between 6:30 and 7, I think 7 is more appropriate for the public.
So since we're cleaning this up,
Yes.
the motion should read something like, we change all meetings on the third Thursday to the fourth Thursday of the assigned month, with the April meeting being held at 6:30 PM.
And we already had a motion and second. That's kind of
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
making a cleaner motion.
Ms.
I think
'Cause it
you
was my
mentioned
motion.
7.
Did you say 7?
Yeah, it
I
was
think
7.
7 seems late to me to start,
I-
just for, what if the meeting goes 2 hours? I mean, especially if you think kids are coming.
I think 6:30 is better.
We do a 6:30 start, we'll take care of our business, and then the public can, if they arrive a little late, we'll still have time to comment. So a 6:30 start, and that's just a clerical change to the original motions. Are we all okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to alter our meeting schedule for the next fiscal year. Is there any additional discussion? Mr. Johnson?
Do you want to discuss meeting location? And
Alternate.
the practice last year was alternate between the council chamber and the LPS boardroom. There's been some discussion of instead of alternating on meeting days, maybe we alternate by year. Probably confusion of the public. Is it easier for them if they know that there's going to be consistency of the meetings for an entire year, and then we move it to the alternate location of the
Thank you, Mr. Neal. And I should have held Mr. Johnson
Neal,
accountable for the
man.
same one.
I'm sorry.
Move that microphone to
November 14th, it was the second Thursday, and so it looked like we were voting the third Thursday because that's when Thanksgiving would be, but Thanksgiving is the fourth, is the 28th. So
think
November, what,
So the-
I just want to be clear on
Yeah, so
November,
the-
what date?
The third Thursday, the school board members will be at the NASB
NASB,
State
right.
Conference. So I think that's probably why that was originally the second
I think
instead
so,
of the
too.
third.
Which is why we
The
left it.
sense was, might it be, so that's,
So the-
Mayor,
and the
I
fourth-
appreciate you asking that question,
fourth,
so
so
I went
this-
back to look on the 28th.
So
So the
we have
20th
the-
would not be available unless Kathy would like to cook, which would be great.
I
know,
generally have a
okay.
25-pound turkey, depends
Okay,
how many
that's-
people are there. But however, I thought we were leaving that Thursday as the
Okay,
14th.
I just wanted to clarify that, so.
That's why I said the ones that were the third Thursdays. That one was not listed as a third Thursday.
Ms. Byer?
Following up on Mr. Johnson's comment, I think that it's nice to have consistency because not only the public, but myself, I have found myself in the wrong parking lot before.
I was worried about that today when I showed up. No one else was here. I thought, oh, I've gone to the wrong building. Ms. Danick?
One of the major discussions that we did last year when we set this up was to try to show that it was a shared responsibility and not one of the entities saying, no, we're going to run this and we're going to run this. And I think the reason we picked to alternate was, number one, so staff from both places could be in the buildings and not be providing transportation at every single meeting. So that's why we did this. I still like the idea of alternating. I kind of put where we're at on my calendar, and I think we're all adults and we can probably read a calendar. Just my observation.
Other comments? So we've got a 4 locking it in and a 4 keeping it alternating, kind of.
I kind of want to look at our bylaws. Does it say in our bylaws that we alternate locations or not? I don't recall.
We can check.
Someone needs to check that, because if it's already in there, then we have to change the bylaws, and I don't want to do that.
I also enjoyed the alternating, but I am concerned that we're making it more challenging for the community to participate. Mr. Johnson? Yes.
There's nothing in the meeting.
Okay.
Alternating locations for bylaws, just regular meeting notification process.
Mr. Boswell?
One thought that's occurred to me is informally, we've talked about rotating the chair each year between the city council and the school board. So last year, a school board member was chair, city council was vice. This year, we've flipped that. It occurs to me that if we were to meet in the city council chambers for this year, the year that you're serving as chair, then that kind of makes that consistent, that you preside from your familiar territory. And then the next year, if we were to have an LPS chair, then we would meet at the LPS district office, and maybe that would be easier to remember.
That's
And I would propose that, actually.
Are you making that a motion? Or do we have, did we clean the motion up on the other one? Did we
We've
vote
already
on
got a
it?
motion out there in second that we haven't voted on yet. I'd really like to just roll this into that one motion, or do we need to do it as a separate motion?
It might be cleaner to have it as a second
Okay,
motion.
so let's vote on dates and times first, and we'll come back to location in a moment.
Okay.
I think if we all the discussion we need on dates and times, I'm going to ask for a roll call, please.
Yes.
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 That would be me. Yes. Mr. Boswell, will you help us with locations now?
Absolutely. I would move that for the next year, the 2019-2020 year, that we meet in the city council chambers where we are right now.
Thank you. I'd like a second for that motion.
Comment?
Yes.
This wouldn't
Can-
preclude.
can
We need a second
Can I
first.
just- Second before we get to the discussion, but yeah. You want to do the second
I'll
part too?
second.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGinnis. Now, you have the floor.
This wouldn't preclude us from changing our mind during the year. If there's some reason, compelling reason we wanted to meet at LPS, we could still do that.
I think with enough notice, we
With
can
the mo-
set or
with the
change.
motion at the board
As long as
meeting.
we have enough time to notify the public and it becomes, I think there's,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm okay with it then.
As long as it's not a fire.
Yeah, please. Here?
Mr. Johnson, you
Any
want
place.
I think to answer Councilmember McGinnis's question, once this is approved, we will post this schedule on the Safe and Successful Kids Interlocal Board website, but we would be able to change that
Okay.
if there was a change made.
Other discussion of the motion to meet for the next fiscal year in the city council chambers for this committee meeting? Hearing no other discussion, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you very much for your patience and your help making that decision. I appreciate that from everyone. There's nothing else on our agenda for today unless anyone wants to interrupt me calling for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'd like a second, please.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. McGinnis, second by Ms. Danik to adjourn. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. I declare us adjourned.